Hi class, it's Lily here with today's informative speech on the causes and effects of Alzheimer's. So my overall goal for today's speech is to inform you guys, for those of you who haven't heard of Alzheimer's, to give you a little bit of basic information on what Alzheimer's really is. For those of you who have heard of Alzheimer's, just trying to brush up on some details and that sort of stuff. So our first slide here is, what is Alzheimer's disease? Alzheimer's disease is when brain cells degenerate and die, which causes a decline in memory and mental function. Alzheimer's is the seventh leading cause of death in the United States, and it affects about 5.3 Americans. So Dr. Jockers was one of my favorite references that I found in this research. And he basically did an outline of what your brain looks like throughout the 4 stages here. So we have the first one here, mild cognitive impairment, which is a short-term memory loss. This begins in the medial temporal lobe, then that moves to mild Alzheimer's, which spreads to the lateral and parietal lobes, which the symptoms include reading problems, poor object recognition, poor direction sense. Moderate Alzheimer's is it's the disease which spreads to the frontal lobe, which these symptoms include poor judgment, impulsivity, and short attention. And then the severe Alzheimer's spreads to the occipital lobe, and the symptoms include the visual problems. So that obviously it affects the vision. So what are the signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's? So Alzheimer's affects 3 parts: behavioral, physical, and cognitive behaviors. Some of those symptoms are communication impairments, hindered social skills, needing help carrying out tasks that used to be done before, misplacing things, getting lost, difficulty following instructions, lack of focus, hallucinations, and with all of this comes irritability. Someone that's going through this and not able to remember things and getting lost and stuff obviously becomes irritable. So diagnosing Alzheimer's, there's kind of a broad span of things that need to be done. So the first one is a neurological exam that's mainly done with your primary care provider, the first person that you should address when you are experiencing any of these signs of early Alzheimer's. A brain MRI, which is mainly done through a neurologist or a psychologist. A mini mental state exam, which are kind of done in the office, and they're just kind of going through what's your name, what's your address, your phone number, and that sort of stuff. And computerized tests cleared by FDA, which have just kind of, it's a research project as well, so there's a lot of implementing and revamping that are constantly happening with those computerized tests. And here I have one of the small little tests that are done in office, which would coincide with the neurological exam, which is a clock test. So your primary care provider would give you a sheet of paper and tell you to number your clock from 1 to 12, and he would give you a time for you to put on your clock. And that would be one of the first tests that would ever be done to diagnosing Alzheimer's. So what causes Alzheimer's disease? There's different environmental factors, genetics, so where you live, obesity and not obese, and if you lived in the country, if you lived in a town, if you lived in a big city, those are all factors. Genetics, so family history of Alzheimer's disease in immediate family, so parents, and then depression and anxiety disorders put a person at risk just with all the trauma and stuff that goes on that I also referenced from the Mayo Clinic site. Health conditions such as hypertension, coronary artery disease, diabetes and hypercholesteremia. So I found some interesting information through Dr. Jocker's website. And basically, the diabetes, they found that a type 2 diabetic with an average blood glucose level of 190 or higher had a 40% higher risk of dementia than diabetics with an average blood glucose level of 160 or less. Middle-aged type 1 diabetics had higher rates of brain lesions and slower cognitive function than people without type 1 diabetes. And experiencing an episode of extremely low blood sugars, like hypoglycemia, was associated with a twofold increase in risk of Alzheimer's disease. So that's interesting. You never really think of associating your health conditions with Alzheimer's. So my last slide here is a treatment for someone with Alzheimer's, or how do you deal with someone with Alzheimer's, if it's a loved one, a friend, grandparents. So unfortunately, like I said before, there isn't a cure for Alzheimer's at this point. There are several medications to help to slow down the disease, but they will not cure it. So I think at one point there will be a cure, and I think as technology is just advancing, at some point there's going to be a great research that comes out that's going to cure this. So someone with Alzheimer's, basically looking through old photos, music, and videos to bring back those memories depending on the stage of Alzheimer's that they're in. Outdoor activities, crafts, hobbies, things that they used to love doing. And my last slide here are the references. So Dr. Jocker's Mayo Foundation Shaker Clinic that I mentioned throughout the speech. If there's any questions, concerns, please holler at me. I will try my best to answer. Give me feedback. I love feedback. I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation, and take care.